So I didn't write this presentation specifically for this. It's supposed to be an hour-and-a-half presentation sometimes. So a lot of this is stuff that will easily be ignored. I got a degree in science and became a sysadmin, and now I'm an entrepreneur. You know, mostly moved to doing mostly development as a sysadmin, and now I'm starting this company. The company has a name, but it's just me at this point. Hopefully that will change. But Puppet is a cross-platform configuration management tool. No one really knows what configuration management means, so I'm not going to try to define it clearly for anybody here. Basically, we know that it means using tools to manage all of your machines at once from a relatively high level. How high level? I recommend not asking in a very large room because you'll get in many arguments.
Can you summarize what you're different?
Yes, I can, and in this presentation, I'll be doing exactly that, or some of that anyway. So the Puppet itself is very heavily influenced by how I got to develop Puppet, and mostly, so those last three people probably recognize from the Perl book, which is Randall Schwartz's 3 Great Virtues of a Programmer. And the main thing about me is that I break things very quickly and very easily and very often, and so I had to learn how to look at problems very systematically in order to recover from, when you go to recover from a problem, how much do you have to recover? Do you just go, oh crap, I broke, you know, the web browser, and so now I have to reinstall the whole OS? You don't want to do that, but to what extent can you avoid doing that? You have to understand the system to greater or lesser extents to avoid doing that. I also seem to have the ability to find problems that no one else finds. I swear I'm very good at finding problems, finding documents online, and I often encounter problems that no one else appears to have either both encountered and written anything about, even asked about. So those two things have pushed me towards operating very systematically and then understanding exactly how I got to be where I am so that I can reproduce it and so I can really, you know, this happened, what is going on? I also hate working, so as much as possible I would like to explain to the computers how to do the work, and then I would like to go home at that point. So I try to manage my network and write my code the laziest way possible, and there are always two definitions of lazy, and I choose the right one. And as the quote says, I object to doing things that computers can do. That's why we have them, and to the greatest extent possible, I would like just to have them do the work. I've been waiting for somebody else to solve this problem for a really long time, and they haven't, and so out of desperation, I've attempted to solve it myself. And unfortunately, at this point, I have to believe that I can change the world because no one else is even trying at this point. I know that I can compete better against all those people who really aren't doing anything at all. And there are people who are doing something, but not very much. There are people who are saying that somebody should be doing something, and then they sit down. So, you know, you got to do something. So what am I actually trying to solve? You know, what is it that I see that is a real problem? And I mean, this is just a short list of it. You look back 10 years ago, and it was like, well, if I've got a bunch of computers, I can hire a guy, and that guy can do stuff, and you know, it's fine. And you know, okay, we got a bunch more computers, we got to hire one more person. You know, and then suddenly we're like, okay, now we got to hire 700 more people. You know, there was, I don't know if you guys ever saw back in the early phone days, there were these graphs that were like, that the scale of operators right now is that by 1960, every person in the world is going to have to be a phone operator. Well, if you look at the growth of servers, of machines right now, you know, by 2020 or whatever, all of us are going to have to be sysadmins. Of course, the truth is almost everyone is a sysadmin already, unfortunately, but everyone's going to have to be employed as a sysadmin because we're going to have too many computers. So how do we handle just the profusion of computers, plus the services and the complexity and heterogeneity of those services? There's money lost, there are things, you know, not even just money, you know, lives can get lost, real problems can happen, not just money. You know, we've already seen, you know, what, 12 different operating systems today. In a couple-hour period, and that's just 2 presentations, so there are plenty more out there. None of us have enough time, and we all miss our families. So what has this kind of resulted in? What it's resulted in for sysadmins is that basically we all have relatively crappy tools, and we don't demand very much of them. You look at most of the tools we have, and they don't talk to each other, they don't work well with each other, they don't auto-configure themselves, they don't auto-discover their configurations. We have to explain the same stupid information to all the different tools in the network multiple times, and if anything changes, they don't go, hey, something changed, why don't I try to fix it for you? They go, you know, I'm just going to make your whole map red until you fix it. And that's not really very useful. So and this is one of the things that really pisses me off the most. That looks like work to me. So I would like to get to the point where, as much as possible, the human tries to fix it, or the computer tries to fix a problem, and only contacts me when there's something really important going on, like money has arrived. So, this is another thing too. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this. Best practices. If you're a sysadmin, you're just starting to learn. What website can you go to and learn all about being a sysadmin? What website can you go to and learn all about the new technologies that are showing up that are important to sysadmins?
Sage.org?
So you just start reading Google, just from the top. There is no sysadmin best practices website. All of our security policies
Is there a sysadmin worst practices website?
Yes, but it's down.
It's Microsoft.com.
That's very good. Quick.
One of the other problems is the language that we speak to each other to manage our computers is not a language that the computers themselves understand. So when we say, this is what a secure server means in our network, we're saying that in a way that humans can understand via a Word document or a text document or a wiki or whatever, but computers don't understand those. So we have to, somebody else is responsible, so this is a hope policy is what I would say. And somebody else has to translate that hope into the closest thing they can get to reality. And I think this is a real problem. Again, very much resembles work. A human has to perform that translation, and I don't like that. So the solution is theoretically configuration management. It's this high level, let's just manage the whole thing, and you can just say things like, I would like a web server, and it would go, here you go, sir. And you get your high level languages, you express what you want at very high levels. So like these services, they need to behave in this way to this service level, and they need to, blah, 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 blah. And they should work across platforms. They should go to all the operating systems we have and just work. And everyone's like, yeah, this would be really great. The next slide is going to say where I can download that. And the answer is, you can't. So there are lots of tools that do this right now. And there are 4 or 5 academic tools that have one installation by the person who wrote the tool. And if you ask that person, so would you recommend that I install your tool? Because I'm really excited. And they go, no. There are the commercial, the GUI-based tools that are like basically, a very big GUI that takes the horrible administration practices that you try to train out of your junior admins and encode them in a very expensive tool. And then you've got open source tools, mainly CF Engine. It's by far the most widely distributed and widely used configuration management tool out there.
And it is in production.
Yeah, it is. It is. The author of CF Engine is focused entirely on research. He does not run this on a production network. No one at Oslo University College, where he works, runs this on a production network. There are no unit tests. This will not compile. Every second or third release won't compile on OS X or Red Hat or AIX or who knows. I was a consultant. I sold CF Engine solutions for 2 years, and this is what's driven me to write Puppet. Because if I could have used CF Engine to do my work, I would have. I tried to build a community around. I don't want to just write about CF Engine. I worked very hard to try to use CF Engine as the source of my solutions, and I ran out of options, basically. So, I've tried all of these. I know at one point last year I was the only person in any of the lists involved in this that had actually attempted to use all of these tools. I downloaded all of them. I tried to do something with all of them because I wanted to understand, what is really going on? What is different? What is better? Can this just solve my problems? Can I just go, sweet, this is done, and go home and not have to work? No. So when it became time to, when I decided I did have to go out on my own, I basically was able to apply a lot of the stuff that I've been kicking around in my head for a long time. And one of the main things that, there are 2 related things that I really want to accomplish with Puppet. And the main thing is that the way that we manage computers right now is embarrassing. And I know that we don't think that it is. We're used to thinking that this is okay. We're used to thinking that computers failing at every little thing is okay. We're used to, thinking that very brittle services and installations and operating systems and networks and all that stuff is okay. And I just don't think that it is. I think that we need to expect more from our operating systems and from our software and from our tools. And we need to expect the computers to be a little more self-reliant. And so one of the things that Puppet is trying to do, in the long term, I would like to use it as a stepping stone to do things like that. One of the things that it does do is begin to create a stack of tools that I don't think Puppet is going to be the solution, but the lowest layer that Puppet creates may be an inspiration to what is the solution. I expect, we won't see Puppet running as it is in 10 years, but I do believe that you'll be able to look back in 10 years and say, this stack of tools that my machines use to manage themselves was inspired by Puppet in some way. But I can't just write something that inspires people. I have to actually produce a tool, and no one's going to be inspired by talking, I've learned in the last 5 years of talking. So what I'm trying to do is, on the one hand, I want to write something that will solve some of the problems that I see today as quickly as possible, because I need to make money. I haven't gotten paid in 8 months. I've been developing full-time on this. And I need to have a tool that I can sell to potential customers, and that I can convince people to download, and I can convince people to try. And everyone tells me I'm willing to be your third customer, but not your first, which is kind of problematic. So I'm trying to build a tool that I can use that will work very well, but I also want that tool to be inspirational and to be able to, people can look at that and go, whoa, this allows me to think about the system differently. So this is some of the things that you won't find in the foci that you won't find in other tools. I think simplicity is far more important than functionality. I would much rather provide you a simple tool that doesn't do very much than a very, very difficult, complex tool that does everything. Because the truth is that if you have a simple tool that doesn't do very much, you will use that simple tool to do all the things that it can do, even if it's not very much. And if you have a complex tool that does everything, but you can't figure out how to use it, you won't use any of it to do anything, which is why so many of us have OpenView and don't use it. And thus, I much rather would have, I mean, I've been very heavily castigated by a lot of people for having a tool that is not perfect. It doesn't follow all the theory. There's no great theory behind it. And they all say that I have to wait until the theory is done before I can create the perfect tool. And I go, okay, you continue working on your theory and I'm going to, do something. And I think a community is really important. I think a lot of us have information, a lot of us have knowledge, that there is no good way for us to share that information, to share that knowledge. If you think you know how to make the most ridiculously secure Linux box, how do you share that with somebody? Well, you can write up a big script. You can go through all the hours it takes.
Yeah, but they can't see it because you're secure.
Right. So I want Puppet to provide not a forum, but a language with which to share that information. So you can encode your mad skills in Puppet's language and then share that with those mad skills in a way that somebody else's computer can understand. And these are canonically called libraries, I believe. So the abstraction layer that I'm building in Puppet is basically a very low-level abstraction layer between the bits on the disk, the things that the language that the operating system speaks, which is basically things like files, running processes, the running system state, and the elements that we actually care about. Because I don't think anybody in this room really actually cares about Etsy password. I mean, you might think that you do, but the only reason you care about Etsy password is because there are sometimes users in there. Some systems there aren't users in Etsy password. Some systems, there may or may not. OS 10, do you actually know if you care about Etsy password? I think, sometimes it's confusing whether you care or not. So I know that I don't want to care about that. I don't want to care about the cron tab files. I don't want to care about Etsy hosts. I don't want to care about Etsy services or any of those files in Etsy. What I care about is, do the users I need to be there, are they there? Are my services running? Is my machine connected to the network in the way that I think it should be connected to the network? Are my commands running periodically? That's what I care about. That's what I would like to tell to the operating system. Here are the things that I want you to do in the way that I want to talk about them. And the operating system should go, I will translate this to crap that I can understand. So this is the translation layer that sits at the very bottom of Puppet. This provides a very declarative interface. Puppet itself has a high-level language that's declarative, so you can say things like, I want this user to exist with these parameters. And you don't have to say how. And if you're running on OS 10, it's netinfo. You don't have to say, here are the commands you use to interact with netinfo, or here are the commands you use to interact with Etsy password. It goes, I will discover, and I will figure out as much as I can. And I will make the changes that are necessary. If it's already there and it's already perfect, I won't do anything. And if I need to make a bunch of changes, then I'll do those changes. And you don't have to explain how, because that how is going to vary so dramatically from OS to OS. OS 10, how you create a user. Linux, how you create a user. Which Linux, how you create a user. FreeBSD, it varies too dramatically. You don't want to have to explain how every time, because the how isn't reusable. Only the what is reusable. And again, I don't want everything. I want a very simple tool. I don't want all the power, I just want some. I think we're all tired of trying to understand. I mean, this is one of the things that just really annoys me about our tools. We use our intent. I say to myself, I need a web server. So I go and I build a server and I encode in this machine what I mean by web server. I might do an apt-get Apache 2, and I might go and config all the, edit the config files and put all my content on there. And to me, this is a web server. And if you were to go to that machine and say, hey, are you a web server? It would go, what are you talking about? And it produces a bunch of information in the form of log files and metrics and things like that. And none of that information says to you, hey, this information is produced by a web server. You've already explained to this computer exactly what you want it to do and exactly everything you know about it, but you explained it in a way that it can't reuse that information. It can't take that information and pass it along as it produces content. It can't say, hey, this content was produced by a web server. Hey, if you're getting an error, that error might be affecting your web server. You have to know that. You have to mine that back out of your system. And that sucks. I hate data mining. So basically what I have is three kind of separate, they're very separate, and it's kind of three components right now. I have the very low level library that does this translation. You speak users and groups and cron jobs and packages and things like that and services, and it speaks cron tab and user add and cat and whatever it needs to speak. It is open source, it's real open source, it's not dual license, it's not all the different strategies. I have no idea if I'll be able to make money this way. If anybody thinks that they have an open source business model that's successful, please see me after class because you're lying. There is no defined successful one. I mean, there are lots of ones that are being tried. I think that the only ones that don't piss people off are service-based, and the only ones that are really lucrative are lie-based. So you get to pick whether you want a lot of money or you want a lot of pissed off, or you want happy users. So mine is less money-based and less lie-based, unfortunately. And I am standards as much as possible. Again, I don't like to work. I don't want to write my own wire protocol when somebody else already has one. I don't want to write my own security system when somebody else has one. The one quirk about SSL certs is that they're a pain in the ass. So what I've done is basically said, I don't want people to have to manage their certs any more than they need to. So I wrote a very simple but very functional certificate authority and certificate manager. So when you start your first server, by default, it creates a certificate authority and is fully able to create and sign certificates. So the first Puppet client that connects to the Puppet server says, hey, here's my certificate request. Will you sign it? And the server says, I'm going to have to think about it because by default, the server isn't going to auto-sign everything. You can tell it to auto-sign everything if you want. You come back and ask the server, are there any certificates waiting to be assigned? And it says, yes, from these hosts. You can inspect them if you want, blah, blah, blah. You sign them. The next time the client requests, the server says, by the way, here's your signed certificate. Now they can communicate. Obviously, they have to be able to communicate unencrypted in order to have this exchange. This is the only exchange that's allowed to be unencrypted. I love Ruby. Addicted would be a good way to think about it, but I like the fact it's written in Ruby because it is easy to understand. You can look at it. It's not C. It's not, things that are worse than C, which are
Most things.
Anyway,
C minus
so
minus.
It's in Ruby. It's easy to understand, and the language itself. The Puppet language itself is also focused on reusability. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for you to say, for you to extract common terms out of. Do I have 10 more minutes? Or?
You have a few more minutes, but I do want Matthew to come up here and start preparing his machine.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So,
we kind of just sneak you in. But is
Yep.
there any way we can get you in for the full talk? Because you're an excellent speaker. Yes, we want.
I do have a. You can get me in. I live in Tennessee and I don't fly out here very often. I mean, we discussed this before. I can be sponsored out here, but
We'll sort that out.
I may get flown out here again. I do have a demo where I could create users and stuff, but I recommend not plugging these things into your Mac while it's closed, because what it will do is destroy everything. So I can't really show you the demo because I don't know where the windows went. So let me see if there are any.
Use the thing that squishes the windows. I think that'll bring them back in.
Yeah, but I tried that.
Okay, you tried.
It was not a good thing.
Okay.
So I do support transactions right now, but I haven't characterized all the transactions. So everything is done transactionally. You can roll them back. I don't have full control over them yet. This is what the language looks like. It's a data dump. It just looks like a hash with some extra fields. You got the type, the object you're actually managing, and then all the attributes. And it's very simplistic. I do support classing, so you can aggregate classes and then just here are the classes my server is. I've got reusable components. This is not easy to understand off the bat, but this is something that you can essentially say, here's how I retrieve a file from a remote system. And you encode the URL type and the host name and the path, and all these defaults for things like modes and owner, because default you're going to use mode 644 and owner group and group, owner and group root. So you write this reusable stuff and share that. I've got something that does automatic checkout and maintenance of subversion code. It's far more complicated than that.
Wow.
You can do relationships between objects. This is one of the big differences between CF Engine and Puppet. You can just say, this thing depends on this other thing, which means do the dependent thing first, and if the dependent thing changes, let the other thing know, and it can react if it can. Services can restart themselves if a required file or object changes in any way. Yeah, everything is very standards based. Some of these servers, the logging and some of these other services are turning into a separate project, a Runnels project that I'm hoping will become kind of a message bus for the enterprise.
What project?
Runnels, R-U-N-N-E-L-S.
Okay.
You can find out about that on reductivelabs.com also.
I'll slow that down and repeat it for everyone. Reductivelabs.com.
And I have plenty of business cards, so if anybody wants one, I can provide them. The overall state, I basically I'm comfortable with it, but it's not in use production anywhere, so I know that there are going to be things to iron out in that first production. I'm pretty sure I just delivered my first client, so hopefully my first production installation will be in the next month or two, and things should happen then.
Can you catch a few questions while
Yes.
he's actually getting at the video, because he needs to do that?
Yep.